Hey guys, welcome to Slip the Jab Boxing. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get into it. Can Chris Eubank Jr. be considered a success if he never wins a world title? I mean, when he burst onto the scene, he really burst onto the scene. He was explosive. There were loads of videos of him doing combination punches on the bag and on the pads. And it can't help when you've got your dad's name, who was one of the most famous boxers in England. So I guess first we have to really figure out what success is. Success, by definition, is the achievement of something that has been desired, planned, or attempted. So we'll save our answer for that to the end, but at least we have a definition to go by. So I guess we have to figure out what exactly it is that Chris Eubank wants from his career. At first, I would have assumed that he wanted to be like his dad. He wanted to be a world champion like his dad. His dad was super middleweight WBO champion and middleweight WBO champion. And this was during a time when the WBO belt wasn't looked at how it is today. It didn't have the same level of prestige. But you could see, even by going for the IBO belt quite early, he was looking to emulate what his dad did. You know, create an era of mysticism by the silence, going for the IBO belt and trying to make that a more respected belt rather than going for the more well-established belts. And obviously, as everyone knows, his dad was around him all the time. His dad was very, very involved in his career at the beginning. And some say that that may be the reason for, I'm not going to call it his downfall, but let's say him not reaching his full potential. There have been moments where it's been pretty hard to take Chris Eubank Jr. seriously. I mean, with his dad's antics at times, because his dad definitely likes the stardom. But it appears that he's kind of grown out of his dad's shadow now, and he's growing into his own man. The issue is with Chris Eubank is that he's had big fights, and a lot of them he's failed to step up. That's been the basic narrative around him. His first fight of any meaning was Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, he gave a good account of himself, but unfortunately, he stepped up a bit short. After that loss, he came back. Next big fight on the horizon was George Groves in the Muhammad Ali Trophy. Now, this was actually at super middleweight at the time, which I don't believe was Chris Eubank's best division. I think he's a 160-pounder middleweight. However, once again, he gave a really good account of himself, kept on coming, took some real bangs, but ultimately he came up short again. The boxing skill of George Groves was just too much for him to handle. And the strength. You could kind of see the difference in strength. As I said, Chris Eubank Jr. is not a super middleweight. He's a middleweight. So you could see the strength difference and just the way he was being manhandled in the ring. I mean, he gave a good account of himself, but you could just see there was just a difference in level. Not necessarily a difference in skill, but more a difference in, I wouldn't call it ring generalship, but just, I guess this is where not having a trainer flashes up. Chris hasn't had a trainer for a long time. He didn't have a trainer at that point, and this was common knowledge. We'll never know if he would have been a better boxer with a trainer because he might have had the wrong trainer. It's not something to really speculate on, but ultimately, we can say that that was a factor within that fight. So he loses that. Next came James DeGale. And this was a James DeGale that was nearing the end of his career. I believe he retired directly after this fight. He had been champion. He had one of the versions of the championship at the time, and he actually vacated it to take this fight on with Chris. There wasn't a lot to say from the fight. James DeGale was clearly near the end. He didn't really give the best account of himself, and Chris Eubank Jr. did what he needed to do. He went in the ring. He dealt with James DeGale that was really just there to survive, not really there to do anything special. So, you know, he did what he was meant to, but it wasn't really considered a career-defining win because, as I said, James DeGale was nearing the end of his career. He just vacated the world middleweight championship, or world super middleweight championship, sorry. So, at that point, it's not as if James DeGale was a major scalp on your record.
The fight itself was okay. I mean, the most exciting part was probably Chris Eubank picking him up and giving him a spine buster. If anybody watched WWE, then you know what the spine busters are. He got through the fight and he didn't do much else for a little while. Then he returned to England and was set up to fight Liam Williams. Now, this was the first time that you started to see Chris Eubank come into the era which he is now, which is, he has the same level of arrogance. He's always been arrogant, but now it's like he's got a different level of finesse with that arrogance. It's like he applies that arrogance differently. And I've got to admit, I love it. I think the guy's hilarious. I love watching him. I love the big jackets. I love the sunglasses, all of it. I think it's just so funny. So, on with the Liam Smith fight. He dealt with Liam Smith quite easily. I believe he knocked him down 4 times, which was good. You know, didn't knock him out. I remember in the post-fight interview saying he could have, but chose not to. Not so sure about that, but he did what he needed to do. After that, it was a bit of a what next for Chris Eubank Jr. He'd been IBO champion, but we needed to see more from him. We needed to see him try and go for a real belt. But out of left field, out of nowhere, a fight got announced with Conor Benn. Now, there was no real rivalry between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr., but obviously their dads had one of the most famous rivalries in the UK. So that was meant to be the selling point behind this fight. And although I wasn't that interested in the fight when it was first announced, as it grew closer and closer, I did get more and more into it. I love the 60% baby, all of that. That marketing by Chris Eubank Jr. was brilliant. 60%. However, the only issue with this fight was that there was a catch weight in place. Now, that catch weight was, I believe, 158 pounds. And then there was also a rehydration clause. Now, the issue is with that is, as I said earlier in the video, Chris Eubank's always been a 160 pounder. That's what he's always been. So in order for him at an older age, past 30, to go down below 160 is dangerous already. Then to not be able to rehydrate to your full capacity is also really dangerous. But he's his own man. That's what he decided to do. So that controversy was there. His dad was very vocal about the fact that he was not a supporter of this fight. And then 2 days before the fight, it comes out that Conor Benn had allegedly been caught for using PEDs. This caused a major issue because obviously the fight was then scrapped. But Chris Eubank still decided to make weight on the day of the fight. He uploaded a picture, as you can see here, and he did not look good. He did not look good. A lot of his face just looked really sunken in. And so when a boxer dehydrates themselves in order to make weight, all of the fluid from their brain is actually gone. So if you knock your head or something like that, your brain literally will rattle on your skull and you're in a higher chance of getting brain damage or something like that. So you can see by the picture, he does not look healthy. But as far as we knew, that was that chapter closed. Move on from that now. Out of nowhere, next up was Liam Williams. Now, Liam Williams, popular fighter. He'd fought Canelo before. He'd been a world champion before. So people knew who he was. It was a respected opponent. However, most people thought Eubank Jr. would have enough to get what he needs to do done. Boy, we were all wrong, eh? At this point, Chris Eubank Jr. did have a trainer. He was trained by the great Roy Jones Jr. However, the night just did not go the way it was meant to go. Chris Eubank Jr. got backed up into a corner, ate some shots he shouldn't have, and then that was all she wrote for him. It was a shock. I mean, literally just the round before, as you can see I've shown you, he was doing well. Liam Williams was eating uppercuts. It was looking like, okay, realistically, in a few rounds, Chris Eubank Jr. should warm up more and come into this fight strong. But literally in the next round, the opposite happened. And all we knew was Chris Eubank Jr., it was lights out for him. So naturally, what happened next was repeat or revenge. He had to go into a rematch to try and get his respect back. He was very, very, very confident in the lead up to the fight. He wasn't distracted by any Conor Benn drama. He wasn't distracted by the fact that he'd been knocked out. He seemed mentally strong. It was almost as if he didn't just get knocked out by Liam Smith, the way he was going. So bringing it round to fight night now, Chris Eubank Jr. put in a brilliant display. He changed his cornerman. He had Brian McIntyre, in his corner, the trainer of Terence Crawford. So he went in the ring, he did what he needed to do, he did what he was supposed to do, and he looked brilliant while doing it. He looked absolutely brilliant. He looked like he hadn't missed a beat. He did not look gun shy, he did not look scared, he did not look in any fashion like he had just been knocked out by Liam Smith. He came and gave a brilliant account of himself. On my personal opinion, I think that's the best Chris Eubank Jr. we've ever seen. Now, after the fight, he was asked about his career moving forward in terms of who he'd like to fight, and this is what he said.
And now we're on to bigger and better fights. There's some big names out there. I see a few of these guys in the crowd. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you, Conor. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you, Kel. I'm coming for you. Anybody else who wants it, we're going to put on a show for the fans, that's for sure.
Whether or not you'll concede you for your future, what would you say?
Listen, I want to fight Triple G. I don't know where he is right now, but wherever you are, Kennedy, you've been holding on to them belts for too long. I want to take one, so let's get that.
So based on that, you heard he called out Kell Brook, he called out Conor Benn, and he called out Gennady Golovkin. Now, in my opinion, obviously I don't know Chris Eubank Jr., I've never spoken to the guy, but in my opinion, it seems as if he is not too interested in world titles. He's interested in making money. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We're all in the game of making money, all of us, no matter what our profession is. So I'm not going to judge him for that. And although he said he wants a belt from Golovkin, Golovkin doesn't actually hold any belts right now. So if he doesn't even know who the champions are in the division, that goes to show even more that he is not interested in championship belts. Now, to go back to the question of the video, can he be considered a success without winning a title belt? Well, I guess that comes down to perspective. To his dad, maybe not. Maybe his dad would have preferred him to become a world champion and go down that road. To today's generation, probably, because today's generation care about money more than anything else. So under that, guys, he's definitely made a lot of money and he's got a lot more fights on the table as in options for making a lot more money. So within that, he's also a success. And based on his comments and the way he's moved since splitting with his dad and kind of coming into his own character, he does seem to chase money fights way more than he chases anything to do with the belts. He doesn't really have eliminators. He doesn't chase down mandatories. He doesn't ever call out the champions or anything like that. They don't really talk about him. Now, I'm not going to blame him too much for that because at middleweight at the moment, there aren't a lot of cash cows that are champions. In fact, there are none. There aren't. It's just not. It's not the greatest weight division right now. So to answer it myself, I would say yes, he can be a success without winning a world title. He would have had some career-defining fights, which he's won. He's got options on the table for more career-defining fights. And it seems like the sky's the limit. I mean, he's not exactly old, so it's not too late for him to win a world title as well and win career-defining fights. So I would have to say yes, he can be considered a success without winning a world title. But it's not all about what I think. It's about what you guys think. So please let me know in the comments. I would love to know if you think it's possible to be a success without winning a world title. Someone else that comes to mind, an honourable mention, would be Dillian Whyte. I would say he's successful. He's made a lot of money. He's a pay-per-view star, but he's never been a world champion. I mean, if we're all in this to feed our families and to feed ourselves, then I've got to say you're a success. You don't necessarily need to be the best at something in order to be considered as a success at it. Some people play music at home and they can consider that a success because they're able to entertain their family. You don't necessarily need to win a Mobo award. But anyway, I don't want to ramble. Please let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you liked the video. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll chat to you guys soon. Take it easy.